Hello and welcome to the Cast Iron Friday night interview. Every week we're talking to a creative about the work they're doing or perhaps the work they're not doing in these strange times. Tonight's guest is Steph J Weller. Hello, how are you?
Hello, I'm all right, thanks. All right, how are you?
I'm all right. Yeah, it's a strange time, isn't it? It's a strange time. I can't ask you. Did you see it going this way this year like this? Because nobody did. Do you feel?
No, I didn't.
Do you feel that you're prepped for it? You know, nobody could have been trained up for this, but do you feel that you're well equipped, or do you feel all swimming in a?
Yeah. Well, I would say well equipped is it's an interesting term. It's a much better term than prepped because, as you say, I don't think any of us could have been prepped for it. I think I am more equipped for it than I would have anticipated. I think I was very ill-equipped for about the first 2 weeks, where I just sort of sat around being very despondent about the fact all my wonderful projects have now just hit a massive brick wall.
Yeah.
You find ways. I find ways to keep myself busy, and that turns out to be a useful thing for me during this kind of period. It's not necessarily a healthy thing for everybody, but
No, but you are a producer, so in theory, that's what we look for in a producer is somebody who can go right. If it's all gone wrong, help.
Exactly. So yes, very quickly that sort of part of my brain kicked in. So after that initial feeling sorry for myself, feeling desperately sorry for all my artists and all my friends and all the other creators and what they were going through, I then went, okay, right, what can we do now? And what opportunities, if any, are there? Or how can we create some? Or how can we just feel okay? It's not always about being busy. And I think we all have had to accept that we are working at different rates on different things and there is no right or wrong. But yes, I did feel that there was a bit of responsibility on me as myself to find a way through.
Yeah.
The producer lizard brain, I guess.
Well, that's the thing, because I was saying, I describe you as a producer. Is that when you sort of like are doing the cocktail parties? Is that is that how it, when we say, oh, what do you do? Which is always a painful boxing in sort of question anyway. What do you do?
So I would call myself, I'm an independent producer, and I have kind of two streams. I am a festival producer, so I produce festivals and outdoor events. And then I also work in theatre and musical theatre. So I work with new writing and existing theatres and existing shows to take them on places. So I have kind of my theatre hat and my festival hat. Ultimately, I guess I just enjoy helping stuff get done.
Well, that's interesting, isn't it? Because I've been speaking to a lot of people recently about whatever their background is and whatever sort of challenges they've had. It's about they were in a thing, whether it be as a singer or an actor or whatever, or a writer, and they weren't able to find a way to get things done. So I thought, okay, I'll be the one that gets things done. How did you? This is not necessarily an easy question. And I don't know how it can be diluted down to a Twitter-friendly 180 characters. But how did you get into this, or did you see yourself? Was it would 15-year-old you be surprised by you now?
Absolutely. I think, well, for a number of reasons. Firstly, my 15-year-old herself was doing her best to self-sabotage and not get any exams. So I had no idea what the future held. And my 15-year-old self was very preoccupied with performing. So I would never have anticipated that if I'd had a career in the arts, which seemed like a million miles away from, Croydon, it certainly would have been on stage, not behind stage or creating work.
Yeah.
So my career sort of ended up happening through a very long and tortuous process through which I had a long series of proper jobs, as people always like to call it, as your family always like to call it. I worked in academia in the end.
Yeah.
Sorry?
You were a civilian. You weren't in the...
I was a civilian. You were a civilian, yeah. So despite me totally mucking up my education, I ended up working in a university in research for a number of years, but I always did theatre at the side, and I progressed. I shifted. It's not a progression, it's a shift from being on stage to directing, which gave me a taste for creating the work as well as kind of representing the work. And then I started to get a hankering. I think it's a control thing. That's awful, isn't it? I kind of wanted to help make it in a kind of all-encompassing way. And I started then doing some small local events. And my colleague, co-creator, I guess, Gigi, who runs the Reading Fringe Festival, she's the festival director, I'm the producer. She does what Gigi does, which is I was really keen to do a kind of cabaret event. And she just went, well, why don't you just do it then? Yeah. And so I did. And it gave me a taste for it. And then so I kept making work. I kept making work whilst working full time, as we all do. And then I realised I wasn't happy. And I was spending more and more time at my local theatre, Progress Theatre. I was on committees, programming committees, and I was chair of the theatre. And I was spending most of my non-working time doing theatre and my working time not really being satisfied. And got made redundant. And at that point, I thought, am I going to go back into doing jobs that are with lovely people but don't satisfy me, or shall I just take the plunge and try and do this weird freelance thing that I've heard people talk about? And that's what I did. And I did the kind of, I got in touch with a theatre company I really admired, Tonic Theatre, who are like an industry change organisation looking at kind of representation, gender representation, particularly in theatre. I offered my time for free just to understand how the industry worked. I took on very small projects here and there, freelance, and it just sort of built up from there. It's that kind of patchwork, following your nose approach. Yeah. I had no formal training. I just followed my nose a bit and kind of pieced a career together eventually.
And having that opportunity to be in a particular room at a particular time that you were able to have those conversations, I guess. You were speaking earlier about sort of control and sort of stuff. I'm not asking you to sort of like name names or name companies, but is it born out of were you in rooms where you were just going, oh, it would be so if you just did that, I know how to solve that problem, but you're not. Was there any that sort of experience? Or
I mean, I think yes, I think we've all experienced that. I think we've experienced that in lots of different roles, and I think my desire to go into directing, a number of reasons that did it. You know, I was partly born of maybe initially wanting that control of being the person on the stage going, it's just not how I see it. Yeah. And I know that's what all actors do, but and then you're not happy necessarily with the vision of the show that you're in. And you feel in that arrogant way, you could find a different way that would be more satisfying. And you kind of take it from there, don't you? Yeah. And as a director, I started, I've worked with some brilliant producers myself and some brilliant collaborators. But I sometimes, as a director, you have to put your producer hat on, don't you, to get things done. Yeah. And then before you know it, you're doing more of that, and then that's all you're doing, really. So I think in every career, though, don't you get that where you just sit in a room going, guys, just let me do it?
I think so, and I can't speak to sort of the different experiences that you and I would have had. And as you say, sometimes you fear that it might be arrogance because the guys do it the way it is in my head isn't necessarily the best way forward. I mean, you gave a shout out to Croydon, which is where we met. We met in Croydon. As anybody listening can tell, we are both clearly have very Croydon accents, and Croydon Youth Theatre, which is still going strong, 50 years later, and it's doing online classes, and you can find it online. It's doing as I say, online training. What's your memories of Saito, as it's called? Do you remember much of that, or has it been blotted out of your memory?
Yeah, I mean, Saito was that was kind of the stepping stone for me. It was amazing. It was like a home. It was a thing. I didn't really enjoy school at that particular point, and I was feeling I couldn't settle. I couldn't focus. My wonderful, lovely mum was like tearing her hair out a little bit with kind of my gittishness and scattiness and skiving and all that kind of stuff. But when I was at Saito, everything was brilliant. It was this very rambunctious, I would say, kind of slightly chaotic world where you got to play, which was so important. I would, we all kind of, I'm sure, partied harder than perhaps, was certainly harder than I would do nowadays, that's for sure. But it was more that you felt you were simultaneously looked after, but you were also allowed to try playing at being a grown up. Yeah. You were given responsibilities, and and you had people who took you seriously and wanted to see you do well and wanted to push you. All that stuff is really important, I think, when you're young, and I loved it. Yeah. I loved it, and I remember weeping when I finally scraped some A levels together to go off and to a university, because it was like, oh my gosh, why can't I just stay here forever?
I think, because obviously it's a youth theatre, there has to be a time, much like the end of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, where you have to go on across the river. But I was only aware recently that, I did some study in Stratford and then down in the South Coast, where everywhere that I studied had its own theatre. And Saito had its own theatre. And it's only now that I'm in the wider world that I realise how extraordinarily rare and privileged that was, because it was a part of a converted school, and that sort of whole theatre, the scene doc, was a thing. And it's only recently that I've realised just how rare a gift that was. Do you remember even what your first play at Saito was? Or your
last was The Lesson.
The Lesson. Was it directed by
Steve Lynch, Natalie?
Yeah.
Directed it. It was Sean. I think I was with Sean McLeavy. I think was. Was
it or Sam?
Was it Sean McLeavy?
Sam Cronus?
Didn't they double cast it?
Oh, possibly, yes.
They were two. My gosh! This was like years ago now, wasn't it? But
it was a long. It was genuinely lifetimes ago. There were people that we work with now who were not born at that time.
Yeah.
Let's not dwell on this.
So many people.
Yeah.
we work with now.
And now you're working with a huge bunch of new people on, as you say, the Reading Fringe Festival. And going back to that point about, did you see this year turning out like this? The Fringe Festival is different this year, but it is still going ahead.
It is. And I think, yes, it is. So what we did was, like everybody else, we sat down virtually and thought about.
No, I think you're allowed to. You sat down. Actually, that still is a real thing.
Yeah, I guess I was meaning we sat down together virtually. Yeah. I have been sitting down literally in my house.
Yeah, you're allowed to do that. The government guidelines do not forbid you from sitting.
I've just been hovering above every surface ever since.
It keeps you safe from germs, I guess, but still.
We had that. I'm speaking for me, actually. I'm not speaking for any of the rest of the team. We are a venue-based festival. We were, into the programming stage, into the planning logistics stage, got pulled. And then, I sat down myself and I thought, what could it be that would work with the kind of practical brain on? And what are the reasons to do it? And the kind of what could it be, could it work, almost end up being we'll work that out. Because, to be completely honest, the first thing you worry about is how's everyone going to get paid?
Yeah.
You've got a team, and they're freelance, but they've committed to something, and you've committed to them. You want to make sure they have that work. That's a big driving factor. And then you also worry about your artists that they've. So we've got a lot of returning artists who are brilliant, and yes, there wouldn't be the opportunity for them to make loads of money if we did a digital festival, but we wanted to provide them with a platform. We felt very strongly we want to help all the artists we can to remain visible, give them that experience, whether that's in a pre-recorded format. We're not asking them to create anything new for us, but if we can be an outlet for them, then it's really critical that we are. And also, we've worked really hard to create an audience, and we've been a fixture for the past kind of 9 years. And there was a sadness at the thought of it being an inadvertently fallow year in that respect. So obviously within a few weeks, and we knew that the Arts Council emergency funding was opening, and we just thought, well, let's just give it a go. Yeah. How can we work this in a way that isn't just putting up little movies, which is obviously, there's nothing wrong with that. No. But for a festival, I think, we all felt quite strongly that it wasn't just about putting up people's films. It was, how do we create that kind of festival community?
Yes.
So, and that's what we've been kind of working to do with a mixture of live and pre-recorded events.
Yeah, and I get the vibe, because it's the same dates as the Real Life Festival would have been. And I get the vibe that it's very much, because we're now 10, 11 weeks into the lockdown vibe and stuff. And there was obviously a lot of huge swathe of pub quizzes, etc., that came out in the first couple of weeks. And I'm sympathetic to the fact that some audiences are going to go, it's sunny outside now, and so there's that sort of thing going on. But I still get the vibe that whatever happens in July, there's still that sort of that genuine festival feel, whether it be, as you say, through pre-recorded or live events or compared events. That there's something unique about each night and each day in that, so it still becomes. Yeah, I'll just reiterate the words again. Like a genuine festival feel about the events this July.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting because, again, with the producer/programming hat on, as you know, that thing about the summer, usually it's how do we entice people into the kind of cellar of a bar to come and watch comedy or this, that, and the other, or into the basement of a club or whatever. But at least they've got drink, and often they're nice, cool places. Yeah. So that's a bonus when you're doing a summer festival. Now it's that thing of how do we get them to come back indoors?
Yeah.
Which is it's a stab in the dark, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're all doing what we think is right. It's an experiment, arguably, but the reason why we've gone for hosted panels, Q&As, compares to introduce the live acts, etc., is to, if you have given up your time to come and sit and watch something on a sunny Thursday evening, let's make that a bit of an experience for you. Brilliant. Let's give you an opportunity to interact with the act. Let's give you a kind of hosted experience that goes beyond you just sitting and watching TV. It's a gamble. People may not like it. They may not come. Yeah. I feel some people will come because we've got a brilliant, loyal audience.
Yeah,
but,
I think so.
It remains to be seen.
And it's difficult, isn't it? Because, notoriously, if you live next door to the venue, you're going to be the last person in the audience. Because so if you actually live in the venue, that's going to be even worse. So there's that. But here's an impossible question, because nobody can answer this with any sense of knowing what they're talking about. What does the future hold for you personally, Steph? What's coming up for you?
So for me, I have some other projects on the side. So I create work with a writer called Natasha Sutton Williams under Working Birthday. So we have had a musical in development for about the last 18 months called Lesbian Pirates. We were going to take that to Beam, which was a musical theatre event, which didn't happen. But we are fortunate in that we have a small commission from the New Wolseley, and they are honouring that commission. And so that would have been part of their Pulse Festival. So obviously we don't know how that will look, but they are still supporting us in doing some development for that show, which will be around creative integration, which is really exciting because it's a show for a predominantly disabled cast, and it's a disabled-led show. So I'm excited that project still has life in it over the next 12 months. So that's great. Another show I was developing last year as part of the Old Vic 12 is Black Power Desk. So about the British Black Power movement in the 60s and 70s. So we're planning to go into another big phase of development this year. Again, that's sort of been put on hold, but we're still creatively meeting as a team. We're talking about what we can do virtually. The writer, Uriel Klein-McCongo, is still writing lyrics and music with her co-composer, Richard Melkonian. So that is still progressing, which is great. We've actually got some of the company in recording virtually this week to put a track together in support of Black Lives Matter charity, which is great. So it's creative for them, and it's obviously for a brilliant and very important cause. So those two things are still progressing, albeit in a different way. And then I have some other side projects that are slightly further behind in development. But the important thing is we're all still meeting and we're all still talking. So I think it could be easy, I think, especially in the first month or so when everything was hard, for you to just want to sort of say, let's pick this up again next year. Yeah. But actually just continuing the conversations with no expectation of output or immediate output has been really, really important. So it makes me feel that I'm able to look beyond this summer, look beyond this currently very empty winter period. At least stuff is happening. It just might be happening more slowly in a different way. But as long as all the creatives involved are feeling sort of supported and feeling okay, I think that's kind of the priority, isn't it, really?
Yeah. And in the spirit of no expectations, is there stuff that you do just to keep saying that's not producer or creative related? What sort of like binging Ben and Jerry's on Netflix, or maybe that is it. What do you do to sort of like not have that in your head at all, or is it always tapping on your shoulder?
Well, do you know what? Before lockdown, it was always tapping on my shoulder. And one of the lovely things about lockdown, so I have to hold my hand up and say, I think I'm really lucky. I'm really privileged. I have a small garden, and I'm not living alone. I'm living with my partner, and my partner is a teacher, so he has retained employment. So even when it looked like I had no employment, I had a partner who did. All those things mean that I have been really fortunate. As a result, what I have found quite beneficial of lockdown is that for a period, certainly before we got our funding for the Reading Fringe and before other things started coming back on, where the 4 o'clock night sweats, the oh God, what have I not done? I have to, the juggling that is ever present, or the sort of where am I going to drop the ball little worm that sits in your head had kind of gone quiet for a little while, and that was really nice. And it's like anything, it makes you go, okay, how do I retain that feeling of kind of enjoyment and freedom while still delivering on my responsibilities and still being involved in a creative, high pressure at times in environment or career. So what I have enjoyed doing, I have enjoyed going wild swimming. So, because I'm in Reading, we've got like the River Kennet and then we've got the River Thames a bit further up, and you can get into it quite easily, and it's not manky. People are always really worried about river swimming, aren't they? And it has been really bloody lovely to be able to get to. It's not the biggest bit of water. It's not like the ocean, it's not like the sea, but that has been really
I want to see you teach children's television. This is a river. It is not the ocean. It's smaller than the ocean. But yeah, that sounds. It's just like getting into a river and swimming about, paddling about a bit.
Yeah, just being most days. Once we were allowed out, that basically, when we were allowed out for 1 hour of state-sanctioned exercise a day. Yeah. That is where I went every time. My other half, Chris, would say to me, "Do you want to do a different route?" No, I don't want to go anywhere else. I have to come and I have to see the river. That was then my thing. Okay. And so a walk along the river. I had started doing Couch to 5K. It's going very slowly and painfully. But those are the things, in fact, way more than I've been really bad. I've barely watched any NT live. I've barely sat and watched much of the amazing plethora of streamed theatre that's online, just because I haven't wanted to sit indoors for 2.5 hours, which is awful because that's what I'm telling people to do during our festival. But
I mean that's the new slogan, isn't it? Hashtag do as I say, not as I do.
I think because when we could get out, I wanted to suck as much of that outside into me as I could. Yeah. So yeah, just enjoying the peace and quiet of the outdoors, whether that's in my garden or by the river, whilst it was peaceful and quiet, actually, which it obviously, won't be, isn't anymore.
Things are changing daily. Steph J Weller, thank you so much for joining us. I hope that we get to virtually sit down together soon with a virtual, G&T, hooch. Wow, there's a 90s Croydon throwback.
Wow, Reef. It'll be Reef as well.
Oh, dear. As long as I think we are actually too young for a WKD. I think it was genuinely after my time, which is kind of depressing because it's now old. But yes, we'll catch up soon, I hope. Take care. Thank you, Steph Weller. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you so much for joining us for this latest episode of the Friday Night Interview with Cast Iron, and we'll be back with somebody else next week. Thank you. Take care.